Have you ever walked into a building and just stopped? Completely frozen by the sheer scale and beauty of it all? Well, that's the feeling you get inside one of Europe's great cathedrals. So today, we're going to dive into what makes these structures such incredible, timeless marvels. We'll look at the secrets that let them soar towards the heavens and somehow stand for 1,000 years. Let's get right into it. The writer Bill Bryson just nailed that feeling of shock and awe when he first saw Durham Cathedral. And if you've ever been in one, you know exactly what he's talking about. These buildings don't just impress you, they really fundamentally move you. So the question is, what is it? What gives them that incredible power? Okay, so before we go any further, let's get one quick thing straight. What actually makes a cathedral and not just some other really, really big church? It's pretty simple, actually. It's the home church for a bishop. It has to contain the cathedra, which is just Latin for the bishop's official throne or their seat. That's it. That's the one thing that makes all the difference. To really get our heads around these masterpieces, we're going to go on a little journey, kind of break it down into 4 parts. First, we'll look at the engineering genius that basically defied gravity. Then, we'll see how they turned solid stone into these incredible canvases of light and color. After that, we'll dive into their role as silent witnesses to centuries of history. And finally, we'll look at their legacy, both enduring and, as we've seen, incredibly fragile. All right, first stop, the architecture. You gotta remember, for centuries, these were the tallest things in their world. I mean, they were skyscrapers scraping the sky in a way that must have felt like an absolute miracle. So how on earth did medieval builders with just hand tools and sheer brain power pull it off? Well, to understand how, you first need to see this huge shift in thinking. The early cathedrals, the Romanesque ones like Durham, they were basically holy fortresses. You can feel it. Massive, thick walls, this heavy, grounded feeling. But then, something changed. Gothic architects started asking a totally new question. Not, how do we build strong, but how do we build up, towards God? They wanted height, they wanted grace, and more than anything, they wanted to flood these spaces with light. And right away, that created a massive engineering problem. I mean, think about it. If you make the walls taller and thinner, and then you punch giant holes in them for windows, how do you stop the whole thing from just collapsing under the weight of its own stone roof? The old, heavy Romanesque style, it just wasn't going to cut it. The solution they came up with was pure genius. It all starts way up high with the ceiling. They created these crisscrossing stone arches, called a rib vault. And what that did was funnel the massive weight of the roof not just straight down, but outwards. Now, to keep the walls from being pushed over, they built this external stone arm, the flying buttress. It's like a catcher's mitt, just perfectly placed to catch all that powerful outward force. The buttress then channels all that weight safely down into the ground. And here, this is the revolutionary part. The walls themselves are no longer holding up the roof. Let that sink in. They've basically become giant stone curtains, totally free to be filled with the most amazing stained glass you can imagine. And see, that incredible engineering breakthrough, it wasn't just about the structure. It was about the art. Because with the walls suddenly freed from the job of holding the whole building up, they could become something else entirely. They could become the biggest canvases the world had ever seen. And this right here, this is the ultimate Gothic dream made real. This is Sainte-Chapelle in Paris. The whole goal here was to make the stone itself just disappear. When you step inside the upper chapel, it's a completely jaw-dropping experience. The physical walls just seem to dissolve into nothing but pure, colored light. It honestly feels less like a building and more like you're standing inside a jewel box. And the scale of it is just mind-bending. Get this, it was built in an astonishingly fast 7 years. It has 15 separate windows, each one is 15 meters high, and together they tell over 1,000 different stories from the Bible. You are, for all intents and purposes, standing inside a kaleidoscope where the walls are made of nothing but light and story. But the artistry didn't stop with stained glass. Oh no. You go to Ravenna in Italy, and the Basilica of San Vitale has these Byzantine mosaics that are 1,500 years old, but they look like they were made yesterday. Reims Cathedral in France has a facade so completely covered in sculpture, it's like a library of saints carved right into the stone. And then there's Siena Cathedral in Italy. Its floor is made of 56 incredible marble panels, and its library walls just explode with color from these amazing frescoes. It just goes to show, every single surface was an opportunity for breathtaking art. Which brings us to our third stop on the tour, Because these cathedrals, they aren't just static art museums, not at all. They are active, dynamic stages where centuries of human history have played out. You know the saying, if these walls could talk? Well, the stories these walls would tell, they'd be the stories of entire nations.
And there's no better example than Westminster Abbey. I mean, the tradition of English coronations kicks off right here in 1066 with William the Conqueror. A couple of centuries later, the famous Stone of Scone, the coronation stone for Scottish kings, is brought here. Fast forward to the 1700s, and it's the resting place for cultural giants like the composer Handel. And today, it holds the tombs of over 30 monarchs and thousands of the nation's most important people. It's a literal walk through a country's soul.
So what this all means is that these buildings are so much more than just places of worship. In a very real way, they're like the stone and glass hard drives of a nation's memory. They hold the stories of its triumphs, its tragedies, and its greatest figures, all written right there for us to see. But that brings us to our final and maybe most important stop, because you have to ask a crucial question in our time. What happens when this legacy, something that feels so permanent, so solid, is suddenly proven to be terrifyingly fragile? And that question became horrifyingly real for the entire world one spring evening in Paris. What happens when something that has stood for nearly a millennium is suddenly on the very brink of being lost forever? On April 15, 2019, the unthinkable happened. The roof and that iconic spire of Notre Dame de Paris, one of the most beloved buildings on the entire planet, were just engulfed in a catastrophic fire. And for millions of people around the globe, it felt like a personal loss. The moment the entire world held its breath was when that famous spire finally gave way. And you have to understand, it wasn't just wood. It was 750 tons of stone and lead that came crashing down, punching a giant gaping hole through the medieval stone ceiling that had stood strong for 800 years. The sheer scale of the destruction was just immense. But right in the middle of all that devastation, something incredible happened. That very same engineering we were just talking about, those ribbed vaults, the flying buttresses, it did its job. That brilliant medieval stone skeleton held firm, even as the whole wooden roof above it burned away. And thanks to that ancient genius and the unbelievable bravery of modern firefighters, the iconic towers were saved. And those magnificent rose windows, scorched, but they survived. The path to bring it back to life has been just monumental. First, just stabilizing the fragile shell. Then, this almost medieval quest to go out and find over 1,000 perfect oak trees to rebuild the roof and spire using the exact same ancient techniques. This whole process isn't just about rebuilding a structure, it's about honoring the very craftsmanship that brought it to life in the first place. So, when you put it all together, what have we seen? These cathedrals are this incredible synthesis of human achievement. They are the absolute pinnacle of engineering, pushing the limits of what was even thought possible. They're art galleries filled with priceless works, and they're the keepers of centuries of our collective story. So in the end, they aren't just relics of the past. They are living monuments, monuments to our ingenuity, to our faith, and as Notre Dame proved to the whole world, to our incredible resilience. They are stories that are still being written in stone. Which really just leaves us with one final thought. After 1,000 years, what stories will these stones tell next?